Hey everyone! So while I play a wide range of games, Battle Royales aren't exactly my forte, but I've really gotten into Rumbleverse. I think it's mostly because it reminds me of beat 'em up type games, and I'm a huge beat 'em up type fan. So I decided to create a top 10, or I guess 10 beginner tips for Rumbleverse. So if you're new to Battle Royales, if you're interested in Rumbleverse, this would be a good video to watch to kind of give you some experience or give you a couple of tips to keep in mind so you can get better. Now, as I mentioned before, I am far from great at these games. I have won a couple of matches. I've top 5'd quite a bit. I would say I average a top 5, maybe like one every 4 games. So I guess like a 25% top 10 rate. Nothing special, but I am capable. Like I know what to do to win at the very least. I've won enough games to have an idea as to what works for me. So starting with number 1, use Playground to familiarize yourself with basic controls. There is a singles mode, which is 40 people playing. There is a duo mode, which is 20 teams of 2. And then there's the playground mode, which is kind of like a tutorial free roam mode, so you get to explore the map, you get to get familiar with the controls and stuff. Within the basic controls, you have dash, you have dodge, you have block, you have a vicious attack, which is kind of like a grapple. So if you hear me say grapple, I'm referring to vicious attacks. Then you have strikes, you can throw items, and you can jump and climb things, as you'll see in this video here. General rule of thumb, strikes beat grapples. So if someone's trying to vicious attack you or grab you, you can strike them and you'll have priority, or vice versa. Grapples or vicious attacks beat blocks. So if someone is blocking repeatedly, you should hit them with a vicious attack because the block won't stop it. And then blocks beat strikes. So if someone is very strike heavy, make sure you have your block ready. Tip number 2. Boxes all contain goodies. So there are 3 different types of boxes, as you'll see in the video. There is a brown box, which is kind of like, I guess, common loot. If you've played Fortnite, it's very familiar. Then there's silver crates, which will have uncommon loot. And then there's golden crates, which usually have a lot of goodies. This is super important. I personally break all the boxes. I don't actively hunt anything. I kind of make do with what I have. As you can see in the video here, this is a top 5 finish, by the way. I wanted to show one where I did remotely decent, so you have an idea and maybe get additional tips. Something that's important, I guess this is kind of like a bonus tip that I didn't think, and I don't think I wrote it in here, but it may be helpful. These stars are important because these stars help with your superstar meter. Attacking also helps with your superstar meter, and with your superstar meter, you'll be able to do a super power move if you have it enabled, or if you get knocked out in singles mode, you'll be able to come back with a little bit of health. So I'm terrible at grabbing people with the superstar move, so I kind of use it as a second win. Tip 3. Find moves that work best for you. So you'll see that there are books that I pick up throughout. There are 2 types of moves. Again, there's strikes and then there's vicious attacks, which are like grapples. There are different types of books, which is important to note. Green is kind of generic. That's the common one. Then there's blue for uncommon. Then purple is kind of like the highest priority version of that move. I find that for strikes, I'm a big fan of the sumo slap. Right now in the video, I am using the Omega Cyclone. It works for me pretty well. I'm not the biggest fan of it though. That would probably be my 3rd favorite. My 2nd favorite is the uppercut because it has high priority. I like strike attacks that start really quick. I'm not too concerned about damage and more about keeping away and juggling a little bit, as you can see in this video. When it comes to vicious attacks, I am a big fan of the spear. The spear does a ton of damage, but be careful because with the spear, you kind of lunge forward, so you might put yourself in a predicament where you're going to get hurt. Also, if you're trying to ring out somebody, you're going to spear them with you, so you both go down, so that's not a good idea. I'm also a big fan of the cutters in the game. I mean, who doesn't love an RKO out of nowhere? Wrestling fans unite, am I right? But I recommend mixing and matching and putting them in the same area. Like for me, I always use the right trigger for strikes and then right button for strikes and then left button for grapples. I would consistently do that so you remember. If you're like kind of like last moment flickering, doing moves and panicking, you'll remember, okay, right button is always strike and left button is always grapple. Tip number 4, upgrades. So upgrades are kind of like powder shakes and powder drinks that you can get. I just grabbed one now for the arms powder, as you can see in the video. You can hold a maximum of 10 in solo, and then in duos, I think you can just hold 8. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it's 8. I would recommend you have the red ones are for power. They're arm upgrades that give you 10% power boost. The green ones are for health or vitality, so you get a 10% health boost. And then the yellow ones are for stamina. Almost everything you do in the game requires stamina, so that is something that's pretty important. I would recommend a minimum of 2 of each. Mix and match to what works best for you. I tend to favor health. For me, it's usually health, then power, then stamina. That does change over time depending on the weapons I have. I would recommend, again, mixing and matching, find out what works best for you. If you have 5 of the same type, so right now I have 5 of the health, the 5th one you take will give you a 20% bonus as opposed to a 10% bonus. Tip number 5, weapons are useful for throwing and strike priority early on. I usually try to grab a weapon as fast as possible because if I have to fight before I am able to find the moves that I'm looking for, a weapon can be good. Number 1, it has priority over strikes, so if someone's swinging at you with basic attacks, you're more than likely going to hit them with the weapon first. And then also, it's good for a quick throw and run away. It does quick damage. And duos in particular, there have been a few times where I was able to save my partner by just chucking something at the opponent that was lunging after them, and a few times it's knocked them out. So I would recommend, and I'll talk about this a bit more later, when it comes to weapons, I usually try to carry at least 1. I am a fan of the steel chairs. There are also bats, and there are a few weapons that you can find throughout the stage that you can't put in your items. I'll talk about items later, but items are on the bottom left corner, by the way. So I would recommend, yeah, I'm a big fan of steel chairs. Baseball bats are cool in a pinch, but I'm more of a steel chair type person. Tip number 6, when you're starting and choosing an area to drop off, they use a cannon in the game, as you saw early on. For me, I like to start in the outer corners. I mean, I think this is a very common tip, but usually I find going specifically to the left side of the map, wherever the map circle will be, it changes every time if you're not familiar with the game style. I usually tend to have like a solid minute or 2 before I see anyone, and even then I can dodge them. Again, as you see in this video, I did interact with someone early on, but for me, I usually do well going on the left side. Sometimes the right side as well, but I do like to paint the corners, like the far right or the far left. Tip number 7, try to figure out an attack rhythm. Some people have a particular pattern that they go for. Some people just swing at will. If you can figure their rhythm out, odds are you can defend and attack appropriately. Again, this uses kind of like a rock, paper, scissors style between strikes, blocks, and vicious attacks. So knowing when to do what, or to have an idea as to what to anticipate, can be very helpful when fighting. It varies per person, and again, go with what works best for you. I tend to favor strikes because they do prioritize over grapples, and depending on the strike, you usually have a tiny chance to dodge something. Tip number 8, doing damage unlocks perks. So if you see on my screen right now, kind of on the lower right, there's kind of like a number there. You'll unlock a random perk. There are quite a few. I don't recognize what all of them do, but I do know right now, one of the ones I have, which I like a lot, you might see it looks like a fire icon with hearts next to it. That means every time I drink a shake, I get a little bit of my health back. I'm a big fan of the defensive ones. There's another one that's super OP. I think a lot of people know this, but it's called Meditate. You'll see your person kind of sitting crisscrossed with hearts around them. If you stay idle, you regain health over time. Like I said, it is a bit OP, but if you get it, it can be very helpful in winning matches. Again, it would probably be good to know everything, but I guess maybe if I make an advanced version of this guide, I'll add specifically what they are. But for now, just know that they exist and they can be helpful depending on your playstyle. Tip number 9. I would say it's ideal when it comes to items. So certain items you can pick up and you can press the D-pad in a direction and you'll be able to hold up to 4 items, as you can see on the bottom left corner of my screen. I tend to prioritize in this order: health. So I will carry health. Health looks like chicken. You'll have a chicken leg or a full chicken, cooked chicken. Then weapons. And then energy. So energy is, in addition to having the power-ups, there are energy drinks that give you short-term stamina boost, which is pretty important, especially towards the end, because you'll see that the area gets very cramped and everyone fights in a lot of places. So for me, I tend to try to have, I would say, 2 to 3 health items, then 1 to 2 weapons, and then energy if 1 or 2 isn't available. Sometimes I usually, most of the time, I drink the energy as I get it, just to have it. And the number 10 tip I would recommend is exploring what works best for you. I'm giving a ton of recommendations here. These are just kind of basic tips to get the ball rolling. As you play, you'll realize some things work better for you than others. Like I said, the spear isn't for everyone. I like it because it's high damage and it's pretty much like a free chunk of health if you're able to knock someone into the wall. When you knock someone into the wall, you can extend combos and stuff. But I figured this was a beginner's basic example. This isn't a definitive how to win, but this is like, hey, you just started and you want to get the ball rolling. So if this is helpful, please like and subscribe to my stuff. I'll make a part 2 video if enough people like this one. And yeah, let me know what you're interested in. I'm always exploring things. Again, who is it good for? The whole goal is to explore gaming and how it's for everyone. You just need to find the right game that works for you. So thanks for being here and enjoy the rest of this video.
Look at that! I can't believe it! What a That might not have happened if they had eaten more Squatch chicken. Squatch chicken, now with free napkins.